This case worries me. Okay. First of all, the wall-to-wall coverage and the focus on things that really don't matter, like the Stormy Daniels, portrayal of him being an ass, when they had sex and all that, that is irrelevant to the charge. Okay. It's a court case. It is not a political campaign, although Trump would like to, muddy that distinction very much, and it's to his advantage to do so. But as a legal matter, and okay, let me just establish, I did get a law degree. So I have a law degree, but I never practiced.
You're an actual lawyer.
I'm an actual lawyer, but I never practiced. So I'm not really a lawyer. And so feel free to do with that information whatever people want. That's
You were
okay.
Too good for the law, Mona.
Not good, not nearly good enough is the
Too
truth.
good.
But
Too good for the law. I mean, as a human being.
Well, thank you. But okay, so as a matter of legality, he can be the greatest jerk in the world, and we know he is, and we know he's a wicked man, but that's not what he's being charged with, and it's not a crime, okay? It's not a crime to be a bad person. It is a crime to commit sexual assault, whatever. He's not being charged with any of that, okay? So, and admittedly, the reason that Stormy Daniels was even there testifying at all in this case is because he denied that the sexual encounter took place. And so in order to rebut that, they did have a reason to bring her on. I'm not questioning that, but I'm just saying all the details, the judge should never have let it in. The lawyers for Trump should have objected. I don't know why they didn't, whatever. But here's the thing okay, so let me cut to the chase. Here's what distresses me about this case. It is, so unlike the classified documents case, unlike the January 6th case, unlike the Georgia case, this really is a stretch. It really is a reach. Nobody else who was not named Trump would have been indicted under this scenario, and I'm afraid it won't hold up. So people are saying, what's his defense? The prosecution has presented its case, and it's done a really good job of showing that he falsified business records. Well, yes, but what's the felony? Falsifying business records is a misdemeanor. From the very beginning, Alvin Bragg has said yes, but if you do it in furtherance of another crime, then it's a felony. Mm-hmm. What is that other crime? Is it
violations of federal campaign laws, federal election laws?
No, it can't be that, because state courts don't have the authority to bring federal campaign finance cases. It's got to be a state law.
Defrauding New York voters?
Defrauding New York voters. Okay, so there are things that are illegal to do in New York election law, but they involve things like telling someone to vote on, Tuesday the 20th when the election is Tuesday the 4th. Or, that kind of fraud, yes, that's illegal. But lying about your opponent, for example, is not, okay? Those are the kinds of things that they're trying to rope in and call a crime. And I am afraid that the defense is going to stand up and they're going to say, ladies and gentlemen, these were these were internal business matters, of how the payments to Michael Cohen were denoted. Even if everything that the prosecution says is true about them being false, that's a misdemeanor. That's not a felony. And as for the felony, they haven't shown that there's any crime here. And let me just say one other thing. The defense will probably know that the Washington Post did a search of public news accounts and found that Statute 17152, which is the New York statute about election fraud, so it's rarely prosecuted, and the cases in which it was prosecuted were a state assembly campaign, a school board election, and a mayoral race. Okay. So they're going to say, the defense is going to say, there is no federal crime here. There is no felony here. And so, nobody was defrauded by the business records. And in any case, that's a misdemeanor. End of story. whatever you may think of Trump, you may not like him. He's a bad guy. I don't know if the defense will be able to say that with this client. A normal client would, but okay. But still, they're going to say there's no crime here. And that is not a frivolous argument. And I'm afraid that it might work with at least one juror, which would be all it takes. And then there will be a hung jury, and we know how that will go. Trump will claim complete vindication.
Total exoneration.
Total exoneration. Or another possible horrible outcome is that Trump is convicted of this crime, and then he appeals, and the appeals process takes a long time, and he loses the election by a very narrow margin, and then the appeal comes back as case never should have been brought. It was an illegitimate prosecution. What does that do to his followers and all the people who think...
That's a best case scenario. Don't go worrying about that.
Okay,
like
fair
if we
enough.
get to that point, we've already dodged 15 other bullets.
No, you're right.
So
You're right.
Getting hit by that one, we're like, okay, we'll take it. So, not a lawyer, didn't go to law school, could have got accepted to some law schools.
You probably could have gone to a better law school.
I chose not to go. So, not a lawyer. But our friends Ben Wittes, also not a lawyer, but knows a lot about this, George Conway, they seem to think that while this may be a stretch, it is not impossible, and that there is a way to read the statutes so that there is a case here. I have a bunch of responses to this. First of all, I think you're underselling the defense. The defense isn't going to just say this is an improper reading of the statute. You must find our client innocent. They will say, he never had sex with Stormy Daniels. It was all a lie. Also, we
hope they say that.
No, they're going to say all of it at once. They've already done this, right? They said this in the cross of Stormy Daniels. They said none of this ever happened, did it? Right? This is
that's true.
They are going to say that,
but that could have been an effort to see how that would go with her. I don't know. Okay, go on.
But they said it to a jury, like in front of a jury. They've already. I know. They've stipulated. Oh, this never happened.
Yeah.
They will also say that none of this was intended to do anything about the election, and that Trump wasn't the one who did it. It was other people freelancing, and that if Trump did it, it was only because he was worried about his private life and wanted to take care of Melania. This is the way all of Trumpism works about everything. That thing never happened. If it did happen, it was actually Antifa.
No, that's interesting.
It wasn't Antifa.
That is a horrible criminal defense. But you may be right that because it's Trump, they're going to have to do that.
Yes.
It may be.
But also, I think from their perspective, because they're not looking for an acquittal, they're just looking to get one person, because they don't have a theory for acquittal. That is the thing. They are playing for a hung jury. And so from their perspective, I think making all 5 cases, even though they're self-contradictory, is probably smart. Because you throw all the spaghetti against the wall, maybe one piece sticks with one juror, and you don't know which piece is going to stick with that juror, and so that's why you do it. But I would say this, Mona, in an alternate timeline in which any of the criminal cases against Trump could have proceeded prior to the election, having this be the only one to proceed prior to the election would have been suboptimal. But we now know that a combination of the United States Supreme Court and a single trial judge in Florida were determined to not allow any of those other 3 cases to proceed. That they were going to prevent any of those cases from proceeding against Trump prior to the election, no matter what.
Just a slight demurral. The Georgia case didn't proceed for other reasons.
But too big. I mean, so the juror, I do not believe that anybody, even pre the Fani Willis, scandal stuff, I do not believe that anybody thought that had any chance of going before, because again, 19 defendants or 11
That's
defendants.
right. But that was
just an enormous case.
So that was the wrong choice by the prosecutors that made that one, that made it impossible for that one to come to trial before November.
Maybe, I mean, but the prosecutors aren't supposed to think about things like getting to trial before November.
No,
right?
whatever.
I mean,
it's not important. It's not important.
Yeah. So in the world that we now know we have, which we didn't know a year ago, I'm glad that this case exists, because at least there's some possibility of accountability. Now, could it go wrong? And could Trump get his hung jury? Sure. But I think that a hung jury is, just as a political matter, no different from a world in which this case doesn't exist and all the other cases are punted until after the election. I think as a practical matter of driving votes one way or another, those things are the same.
I don't know. I think if he gets his hung jury, he gets a boost. He gets a victory. And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen.
I agree. But if there were no case and the only thing that existed were these three other cases, which were all pushed out to the horizon, that would have also been a victory. This way, at least there's a chance that he loses. And also, he's guilty as sin. That's the other thing. Like, he was committing business fraud, whether it's a misdemeanor or not. He was attempting to defraud the electorate. He was committing FEC violations.
Well, so the FEC violation is actually not obvious. Because it depends. Did he pay for this out of his own account? If he did, that's not an FEC violation. He can give his own campaign
the violation comes on the part of, I mean, he's orchestrating the conspiracy, right? So the violation begins at the point of David Pecker.
Not really, because none of that is illegal. Again, the coverage of this
without
has been
reporting. No, it's illegal if you don't report it.
To not report an in-kind contribution. You know what?
Yeah.
This is an area of the law that is incredibly murky, okay, as to what would count as an in-kind contribution. And you could make all kinds of free press arguments that it didn't and blah, blah, blah. It would be very hard to prove that. And
if you didn't have the editor saying over text, at least we'll get pardoned for election fraud, then it might be hard to prove. But again, they have the editor saying at least we'll get pardoned for election fraud.
No, but again,
that's kind of a big deal.
No, it isn't. Well, it may be. It may be. What I'm worried about is, so you do a catch and kill scheme. That is not, catch and kill is not illegal. It is not illegal to pay somebody for their story and then not publish it. That's legal.
Correct.
And so is a conspiracy to do that. Legal.
Correct. Okay. However, if it's done for the purpose of influencing a campaign, then it is an in-kind contribution and you have paid for it and you have to report it.
Maybe. And in which case you get to a failure to report an in-kind contribution, which is probably just a misdemeanor itself and kind of just no big deal. The thing is, there's been a lot of talk. I'm not saying you're saying this, but there's been a lot of talk about how it is illegal to conspire, to try to do these things to influence the outcome of an election. And I don't think that's true, because if it were, then all kinds of things that politicians do to try to influence the election, lying about their opponents, concealing information about themselves, all that stuff would be violations of campaign finance laws or violations of some other law.
Well,
and it's
once money gets tied up in it, yes. Right. I mean, you can say anything for free. Once you start spending money, then you're in a world which is fairly highly regulated.
It really isn't. That's the thing. I mean, these FEC cases, we only have like one case where it's ever been tried, and that didn't go well. That was the John Edwards case.